Dealing with a parent with narcissistic personality disorder. Hello everybody, it's Kirsten here. We are here on Signpost for Living with Dr. Kirsten Hunter, and I've got a very, very special guest. I have got John Andrews here. So we've got two Johns in the room. We've got my husband who's producing John, and he's waving, and we've got another John with a H. We've been trying to work that out, haven't we?
Yes.
Haven't quite. Well, I think you both knew what was going on, but I didn't. Lovely to have you along. What do you think when I invited you?
Oh, no, I can understand the importance of getting all this across.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because this is
I survived.
You survived, and this is a survival story, and we're going to get in and talk it through.
Yes.
Absolutely. And if people don't have this information and they're stuck in this muddy situation you were in, it's a pretty different outcome, hey?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, no, it's changed my outlook.
Absolutely. So let's just get a bit of background on you so the listeners, and this is global, keep in mind, so don't be too Australia-minded, I guess. But what do you do for work? How old are you? Give us a sense of yourself so they know who's sitting across from me.
Okay, so I'm a youth worker and a builder. I've been in the building trade for years, and I'm 63 years old, and I wish I had have known this earlier. And with my parents, we shifted around Australia to many and very different little country towns.
So when you say shifted, how frequently, how often?
Every 12 months.
Every 12 months?
Yeah, Dad decided he wanted to build churches or schools, and so we shifted every 12 months. Yeah.
There you go. And you've got siblings?
Yes, an older sister and a younger brother.
Right. And you've got your mum and your dad. They're still together now?
Yes, 92 and 91 years old. Vegans.
There you go.
Very fussy vegans. Yeah.
Have you got any good vegan stories?
Lots of good vegan stories. But with them, it's particularly hard because there's a lot of things they don't eat that vegans should eat. Dad went into hospital recently, and out I went to Mum, and I thought I can cook whatever she wants now because Dad's does the caring, very limited. And, of course, we went through everything I could go and buy and cook. She hates it all. So I said, so in the end, we're just going to have broccoli, heated up sweet chips, sliced tomato and spaghetti. And she went, I suppose.
Oh, that sounds like a very exciting
everything else
diet.
She hates. Yeah.
Oh, poor darling.
It's terrible.
So narcissistic personality disorder, we met how long ago?
It's a couple of years.
Yeah, probably a couple of years?
Yeah.
Okay, and had you ever heard of narcissistic personality disorder prior to that?
Yes, I had, but I never paid it much attention.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I knew it was another word for someone that was very self-centred and the world revolved around them. I had met a few people that had been diagnosed with that.
Yes.
But didn't click.
Didn't click.
No.
Common. And so tell me about your background that brought you up to a couple of years ago when we met. Just try to kind of fill in the story of the background that led you to that situation.
Okay, so in my particular family unit, I was the scapegoat. My younger brother was the golden boy and my sister was the little lost girl.
Right.
And as the scapegoat, I got blamed for everything. And I have read that sometimes when a parent is a bad parent, they try to blame one of the children for the reason everything goes wrong. For example, I can remember hearing my brother cry up in the front bedroom.
Yes.
And I was down in the kitchen and I knew I was about to cop a flogging. So I shot out the back door. Sure enough, Dad shot out behind me. He had strategically placed lengths of timber at the back door. And, of course, he swung, and that's another story. But, yeah, everything was my fault, and so I copped a flogging every night. Some were particularly bad with steel rod, electric leads. I can still hear the sound of the electric lead cutting through the air. But, of course, back in the 60s, when you went to school with blue lines all over you, it wasn't uncommon, so no one said anything.
That's horrendous, isn't it? That can be common, that cannot be commented on.
Yes.
It wasn't clearly child abuse,
Yes.
which of course it was. And you were the only one of the three that copped it?
Yes. Older sister did on rare occasion, but yes, younger brother never.
And just to warn listeners, obviously, you know, that we're going to be talking about, not to great depth, but we're going to be tapping into this history of physical abuse that you experienced as a child. It's pretty confronting stuff.
Yeah, it is. And because of that, I grew up angry.
Yes.
Furious.
Well, you would be.
And I got worse.
Yep.
Yeah. Because, you know, as I got older, and especially in my 30s, I had a lot of confrontations with Dad about, you know, that was child abuse. Are you going to apologise? And he didn't see that he had to.
No. And going back a bit, was there any pattern to this? Was there rhyme or reason? Was there any, I mean, with domestic violence, when it's unpredictable, it's the worst, you know. Yeah. But whereas if you know, okay, at this time when they come back from the pub, at this point, that's when you duck and hide. But when it's unpredictable and it's not due to any specific cause, you know, we're truly, literally on eggshells. You have no control whatsoever.
No, it was, they call it chronic.
Chronic.
Yeah, so Dad was a builder, and obviously that's quite stressful. And so every night he came home and we would have tea. I think Dad invented a lot of rules to give us hoops to jump through. I look back and I think, you know, it seems as vegetarians and strict vegetarians...
which was very unique at that era,
very
wasn't it?
rare. You couldn't even buy soy milk back then. He had to import it from America.
That's determination.
Powdered. Yeah. And so there were all these little rules. If you broke them, you copped a flogging.
Yeah.
We were churchgoers. If he saw me do anything at church that he thought was untoward, he would look at me and go, belting when you get home. And I knew that we would pull up in the car after church, I would cop a flogging, we'd all go inside.
I'm sure that really disturbed your concept of the church.
Yes, I don't go now.
No, I dare say it's a pretty bad advertisement, isn't it?
Yes, and I understand all the rhyme and reason around it, but for me, I don't like to be there. So I call myself, like I have strong beliefs, but I'm not a churchgoer. Doesn't work for me.
Yeah, and yeah. It's such a difficult thing when someone's been abused with someone who is in any way affiliated to the church to then not go and brandish the church with that, you know, and to separate, you know, it's one individual. Yeah. So, okay, how did you make sense that you got the copping, the flogging and the others didn't? And also, what was the verbal? I'm very interested in the verbal messages that came to you because you're growing up and you're thinking, who am I? How do I feel about myself and the world?
Okay, so I always knew I was okay, but Dad never said that. So in other words, no praise ever for anything.
You're a legend. How did you realise that you're okay? You're more than okay, but how did you know that?
Well, I think you're born with that. You know, you either have it or you don't. And I always knew I was okay. I was one of those kids in class that would ask a question because I knew everyone else wanted to know the answer.
Yeah.
But I would put my hand up and say, you know, blah. I don't know. You see, I worked for Dad for 7 years when I was an apprentice, which was extremely hard.
A whole new level of challenging.
Yeah. And it was because he would show me once and that was it. You had to know. Yeah, you had to catch it. Yeah.
And so any other verbal that would come directly at you?
Yes, well, there was lots of you're an idiot and why would you do that? But I noticed with everyone in the family, he had a little repetition of sayings like close the door, switch the light off. And people don't realise, but all those are put downs.
How can that?
So
I believe you, I just don't understand.
So I've watched my mother now. They've been married 69 years.
Right.
And she believes she is absolutely hopeless.
Right.
Because Dad has told her off every day of her life for tiny things. So she, and a lot of people, they don't think of switching the light off. And Dad would yell out at her, switch the light off, you know, close the door. And we had one young person came and stayed with us once, and Dad said to him, "Don't forget to close the door." So he came back and he slammed it.
Did he?
Because he thought that's what Dad wanted. And of course he copped a flogging for that. And then the young person's parent came around and took him away.
Bet you wish you were taken away.
Well, no, I accepted it as part of life.
Did you really?
Yeah, no, it was...
Did you think it was reasonable, normal, okay that your parents...
I knew it wasn't right.
Right.
And I knew there was a problem, but it happened every night, you know.
It was normal.
Yeah, that's how it was. Yeah.
And what would your mum do? I don't mean to press
Yes,
you there.
and I still think about this a lot because Mum did nothing.
Yes.
And Mum was one of those ladies that were very agreeable. She believed she had to support her husband.
Yeah.
And
she was kind of institutionalised into that role.
definitely, yeah. And I think even maybe before I was born, he'd broken her.
Yeah.
You know, for example, when he retired and she was cooking tea, he would stand behind her telling her, "Turn that down, it's starting to boil, you know, don't stir that saucepan too much." And on the rare occasion she would tell him where to go, but she would do as she's told. If I see Mum now, and I saw her this morning, she will also, a nincompoop, she calls herself.
Really?
And she says, if it wasn't for your father, you know.
So she just has him on the pedestal that he's busily put himself on all these years.
Yes. When you get put down every day of your life.
And micromanaged.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sad for her because it's her life.
Yes, so.
And she was a woman of that generation. She's 92. Absolutely. So a very subservient kind of role.
Yes.
Gee, there you go.
Terrible. And yet, when I talked to her about her youth, at 17 she hitchhiked from Sydney up to Cairns.
Really?
Like no one did that back then.
Yeah.
And yet...
So she was an adventurous spirit to begin.
Yes, but gone.
That's very sad.
It is. I feel sorry for her.
And did you ever try to reach out? Did you ever try to say to anyone, hey, this is what's happening at home? Or I'm guessing not, if you thought it was actually within the realm of normal.
No, it was in the realm of normal. It happened every night.
Wow.
And so didn't think about it.
And what age did you get angry? I mean, how reasonable for you to have your support people be the aggressors and for the world to not be a safe place, and it didn't matter what rhyme or reason, you had no control, this was going to come your way. That to me is learnt hopelessness, which is depressive themes. So, you know, I'd get pretty angry too. What age do you think you got angry?
Well, so I left school at 15 because Dad indentured me as an apprentice.
Yep.
I actually didn't know that till I came home from school one day and found that I was going to TAFE college the next day.
Son, this is your life.
Yes. And that was very interesting.
Interesting. How did you respond? Were you thinking, should I swear? I'm off to work with my father who I'm scared of.
Yeah. But I wasn't scared of him.
Really?
It was just how we got on. You know, I knew that when he got angry, look, there were many occasions where the beltings were so severe. I look back and I think, if I hadn't have gotten away, you know, like ducked around him or dived between his legs, would he have killed me? And I don't think so, but I would have certainly gone to hospital.
That's just horrendous.
Yeah, and...
Did he ever stop himself, or was it always you escaping?
No, I always escaped. Yeah, I'd climb a tree.
It's incredible.
And he would stand below it and say, "You've got to come down soon." I'd go,
and you think, no.
Not coming down.
Those stars are coming up.
Or I would escape into the night and he would hop in the car and he would weave as he drove up the street looking for me. With the headlights on. No.
And what would happen in the morning? How would it wrap up?
Nothing was ever mentioned.
Really? And there was no alcohol in this, is that correct?
No alcohol.
Wow, pure. That was purely him.
Yes.
No altered state from any kind of, you know, drug.
No.
There you go.
It really wasn't, although I kicked the traces at 17, 18 and didn't like coming home, it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I confronted him and said, you know, why did you have to go to these extremes? And why was it every night? And why was it over petty things?
So you started reflecting at that point, trying to understand?
I think Not really. It was just that I'd been living at Gosford on the Central Coast.
Yep.
And we'd left a small business we'd been involved in. We went to stay at their place out in the middle of Australia at Broken Hill.
Sure.
And so we're all in the one house. And yes, I started to say, why were you like that? And he would dismiss it and go, well, you boys turned out all right. I go, we didn't actually.
Yeah.
And so we had one confrontation one day where I said, you really need to apologise for what you did, which he didn't see at all. So after about half an hour of toing and froing, he said, all right then, I apologise. You happy now? Is that what you want?
Are you happy now?
And I went, no, that's not an apology.
No.
Which it wasn't.
Which is him saying, just go away.
Yes. Well, to him...
and he wasn't feeling remorse. He wasn't...
none whatsoever.
He wasn't conveying that.
And to my knowledge, like we've had chats like this 3 and 4 years ago, and it just was never there.
There you go.
But see, with the dark triad and narcissistic personalities, it's about power. Mm-hmm. And when someone apologises, they're admitting they're wrong.
They're giving you power.
Yes, and so he couldn't admit that.
No. But also, as you know, and we'll get into it, with narcissistic personality disorder, people by definition don't have insight. No. So you're asking them to concede something when they don't see it, they don't know it. It's not their framework.
No,
they justify.
He wasn't one for soul searching.
No.
Personal growth, zilch.
No. Absolutely not. And again, can I just kind of quickly, just I know this is very ambitious. You said that he said you all turned out okay, you boys, but you didn't, did you? Your brother didn't turn out too well, and I know that that's a very broad topic. That's very ambitious. And your sister, she also had some medical issues early on as well. So we had a lot of family stresses in there.
Yes. So my sister had a stroke in 11 years old, 6th grade.
Yeah, very, very young, very formative. Yeah.
Yeah, apparently she'd gone down into a lake, cold water, she'd sneezed and that had cut one of the middle major veins off to the brain. And
she had a stroke.
She had a stroke, yeah.
Right. And your brother, he went on to live a fairly...
Good life.
Good life.
Yeah, he didn't have the same work ethic as some. Very smart. But, yeah, so he developed a compulsion to help others. And it wasn't until I talked with his wife after he'd passed that even she said he could not stop that. She knew there was something wrong.
So he compulsively had to help people to the detriment of his family, to the detriment of himself.
Yes.
And he eventually died.
Yes, massive heart attack, 3 o'clock in the morning.
How long ago?
Be 3 years.
3 years. So really we've got your sister who's got some impairment. Your brother's passed away. It's now you with your parents.
Yes.
And I think that's a relevant picture.
It is, yeah, because if I hadn't have spoken to you, I couldn't look after them now. Couldn't have done it.
So let's bring ourselves to that. When we met, what was your experience of your dad and your mum? What was your involvement with them? What was your day-to-day?
So they live about half an hour from where I live. Every time we interacted, I would lose my temper. And of course they would point that out too.
You have an anger problem?
Yes. And of course my siblings knew, my wife knew I had an anger problem. And I thought that it was all my fault too.
And I don't know if we've talked about this, and it's extremely relevant. But you know how have we talked about primary emotions and secondary emotions?
Yeah, we have.
We have. Okay, so it's very relevant, isn't it? So primary emotions, just like primary colours, we've got happy, sad, fear and surprised. And then secondary we've got anger. So you were feeling anger, but in truth you were feeling deep sadness and deep fear, but you just probably couldn't pull that apart, and you were just ready to go with that anger response.
I look back and I'm grateful that no one ever pushed me, because it wasn't that far below the surface that I was furious.
What did that look like? How?
Well, look, I knew.
Yes.
Okay, so I must have had good self-control.
Yes.
You know, someone would pass you in the car and do something silly, and in my mind I would go to places of what I would do to them if I had the opportunity. And there were situations throughout the day, all day, every day, where something would arise, and in my mind I'd have to push it down.
Yes.
Because I was angry, and I knew that I was angry. I changed from building to getting into the hardware and timber industry, and I was going to work on a front counter and serve customers. And I just thought, I hope I don't jump the counter and bash someone, you know,
Really?
because a lot of people come in and ask for strange things.
And are very annoying.
Yeah, and I didn't.
Yeah, I just, you know, and like I know you for who you are, and you're an absolute sweetheart. You've got the biggest heart. You're so generous. You're probably too generous. You probably struggle with boundaries with people. That's my guess. You know, you're just such a genuinely beautiful person.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'd leave my tribe of children with you any day of the week.
People do.
Exactly. This is who you are. Yeah. So for you to talk about being this volcano of anger that was just triggered at a hair's breadth, you know, it's just so out of character, and it really shows that you were in such a damaged state.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does. I was damaged goods.
You were very damaged, and, you know, I don't mean to distress you, but you're damaged for a long time.
Yes.
And that's really sad.
Yes. I escaped into books.
Did you?
Yeah. Avid reader. Like, I could consume books. I'm a super fast reader.
You do have a curious mind.
Yeah, and read everything. Yeah.
I love our conversations whenever we get on some tangent.
Yes.
And so, okay, so when we met, you were really having day-to-day struggles with anger and with your parents.
Yes.
So tell me about that. How much contact did you have? How much did you need to have? You were the only caring child, I guess, in their world. They're hitting their 90s.
Yeah. So I'd remarried.
Yes.
And my second wife thought it was normal to go and visit your parents. And of course I would go, no way, not in a good place, can't go there.
Yes.
And she would go, sure, come on, we'll go and visit them.
Your parents?
Yeah.
Did she not know the story?
She did, but she didn't understand,
of course,
all the circumstances. And it took about a year before she realised that, no, we don't go and visit John's parents.
Because of their behaviour?
Because of their behaviour, and because a lot of the time I could hold myself together while I was there, but when we would drive away, out it would come. Why are they like this, you know? Why do they have to only think of themselves? Why would you bring that up? Yeah,
why does Dad treat me that way?
Yeah. Why? Everyone that way.
Yes.
Very frustrating.
And give myself and the listeners a clue. A few years ago, when you would go visit, what was typical behaviour of your father now in his early 90s? You know, with fast forwarding, you know, decades here.
Yes, Dad's very negative, which is very common, and so very critical of everyone and everything. So everything was based on how he saw things. Right. And if you didn't see it that way, then obviously there was something wrong with you.
You were wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
Bit of an idiot, probably.
Yes, no absolutes. A quick story was a young girl had run out of petrol in Brisbane, and 3 young men had been seen giving her a lift. And that's what the news commentator said. And of course, Dad, when he retold the story, he said 3 young men with tattoos and long hair in a red Monaro had picked her up. And knowing him as I did, because we were having lunch with a group of tradesmen, and I said, because he was prone to exaggerate a lot.
Right.
And so I said, that's what the commentator said. And he went, yes. I said, those were his exact words. And he said, pretty much.
Pretty much.
As soon as he said pretty much, I dived on that. Anyway, they caught the guys, and it was 3 Asians in a white Corolla. But he had assumed that that's who would do that.
Oh, gosh. And he was right.
So he never missed the news. And so he was a volume of knowledge, but when he retold it, it was all how he saw it.
And how did he treat you as a as well and truly an adult yourself, how was his,
I think I was
current day?
to him I was always 15 or 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just very patronising, would you say?
Oh, worse than that. If you had an opinion, he wasn't interested.
Right.
Or you were wrong. I'm quite happy to tell you if you were wrong.
So just his own framework, his own world, that's it.
Yes, very self-centered.
Was he ever, did he ever step over the line and be abusive at all in your adult life?
No, I think we'd come to an understanding where he knew I was on a trigger fuse.
Right.
And so you didn't push that.
Yep.
And there was several occasions when we'd be in company where he would promote some of his ideas, and I would go, Dad, that's rubbish, we won't be doing that.
Sure.
And he would then go, don't tell me what to do, and I'd go, well, you're wrong. We actually put up a big commercial shed on the edge of Brisbane, and the owner got some of his friends to come and help.
Yeah.
And Dad said, we don't want non-tradesmen there. It holds us up. And I said, well, Dad, it's his shed, his friends, he can do what he likes. And so we had this argument, and I was getting angry because I know what he's like. And he stood up, he got so angry, and I suppose at the time he was about 75.
Yeah.
And I said, do you honestly think you can flog me now at my age? And he didn't know what to say, but he was shaking with suppressed rage.
Because aggression, violence was his option.
Yes.
And he couldn't use that anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And so I said, I could tear you apart. And he looked at everyone else there and he said, did you hear that? My own son has just threatened to kill me.
Wow.
And of course he was after support
sympathy.
and sympathy.
And of course they wouldn't have known the context of any
No,
of that.
they didn't know the background. Yeah.
Can I ask you before we move to the present day, did up until when we met, did you ever try to jump in and protect your mum? Did you ever try to say, hey, Dad, don't do that to Mum, don't micromanage, don't criticise, don't control, or was it just a lost cause?
I know, yes. Little subtle innuendos like, Dad, you've been telling her this for, so many years now. Just drop it, I'm sure after 40 years, if she hasn't learnt to switch the light off, why say that? But Mum used to always step in and go, oh, Johnny, I'm hopeless. And I would always go, no, Mum, you are great.
Oh, that's really sad.
And I was always try to be very supportive of her.
Yes.
But lost cause, yeah.
Yeah.
But I still am.
Yeah, of course.
I saw Mum today and she praised Dad up and put herself down and, yeah.
It's that dance between them.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring it to our meeting up. And can you tell myself, obviously, again, but the listeners, that first conversation we had? Can you tell me about what that process was like for you?
So obviously we'd met before.
Yes.
And which helped us cut through some of the...
Yeah, we were just ready to go rapport-wise.
Yes.
I knew you knew me.
Yes.
We were ready to go to battle. Let's get in the mud and let's do it.
And so I started to talk about... And I honestly thought I was the problem. I had anger issues, my fault. How can you help? So you started to ask the relevant questions to do with how my father and I got on, because I'd brought that name up as the reason I got angry. I knew he was part of my problem, but obviously that was my fault. And as we talked, and I brought up situation and issue, you just came out and said it.
With narcissistic personality disorder.
And you actually said your father should never have had children.
No, not someone who presents that way.
Yeah, and as soon as you said that, I knew you were right. And I knew that, and of course no one sits down and says, I think my dad's part of the dark triad and he's a narcissist. No one thinks that. But I wasn't happy with him, and I, even though you say, yeah, he's my dad and I love him, but I don't want to mix with him.
Yeah. You can like a relative, but not. You can love them, but not like them.
Yes.
Not like anything about their behaviour.
So as soon as you said that, it all clicked into place. I knew he was.
Yeah.
And for me, that was an epiphany, but it was a weight off my mind, because I realised also in that moment that he had a disorder.
Yes.
and he was never going to apologise.
And so therefore you didn't have these unrealistic expectations.
Correct.
Then you didn't have the disappointment, and you could start to process acceptance around that.
Yes, and move on.
You could realise what you were dealing with.
Absolutely.
Framework.
And it really did hit me.
I remember you came back and said you've done a lot of reading. That's true to form.
Yes, and I don't do as much reading as I used to.
Right.
I used to actually go to the library one night a week after work, and I'm talking back in the days before the internet.
Yep.
And if you found a juicy morsel, you'd have to send away through interlibrary service to get hold of more information.
It's dedication.
But you did that.
So what happened from there with the ripple effect for the next time you needed to deal with him?
Well, I think once you know what the problem is in any walk in life, you then know how to handle it. So I knew that he was very, very self-centred. I knew that he was never wrong. I knew that he believed in his opinion to be the only opinion.
Gospel.
Yeah, and so, but I also, as I read, I realised with him it was all about power.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so I could hold it together when I went and visited, and I didn't, swear and carry on. And when I left, I knew that I had held it together.
Yes.
And which gives you a bit of a sense of achievement.
Yes,
and
definitely achievement.
It was still very frustrating. It was like, oh, well, I need some junk food, I've just had an hour with Dad. And I still feel that way.
Right, yeah.
But now I can stand back and look at myself now, and I handle things quite professionally.
Yes. And do you find that you'd study him, watch what he was doing and go, oh, there's that? And
Absolutely,
yes. Here's his deflection, and now he's not able to take ownership of that. And this is him being all-knowing, and, he's probably trying to have a bit of control here.
Definitely, yeah. A question arose over my brother's headstone,
right,
which I'd paid for. And he found out some months later and rang me up and said, I want to pay for the headstone. And I didn't really care. But I said, look, Dad's done and dusted. I've forgotten about it. And he said, no, I want to pay for it. And I knew that's the way he was. And I knew for him, as a parent, he had to do that because it was about power and control.
Yeah, being the alpha male.
Yeah, and so rather than argue, I just said, yep, no, whatever. And I hung up. And then I thought, I'm going to be so annoyed when I get home that I let him do that.
Right.
So I rang him back and I said, look, Dad, and I was quite calm because I knew that if I got angry, he would get his stubborns on and not shift.
Yes.
I said, look, Dad, I don't care what happens, but it's paid for, I've forgotten. And even at, I think he would have been 89 or so then, even then the answer he gave me surprised me because he said, so you want me to pull my head in? And I said, what else can you say? So I said, yes.
Wow, that was actually a very insightful comment.
It was. And he knew it was about power.
There you go.
And sometimes we look at a parent figure and we think, do they really know what they're doing? And I look back on Dad all his life and he's always known it was a power trip.
Can I ask you, when he was in public, historically in the church situation and then the work situation, maybe social, would he behave differently than behind closed doors? Would he?
Definitely, yeah.
Which shows that he knew what he was doing. He had the good behaviour mode, and then he permitted himself to do the bad behaviour mode.
I guess, although I have seen him be quite severe and confronting with people.
Sure. When
he felt that he was right, more so than you would expect from someone when you're out in the public.
Okay. So still had that edge.
Yeah, but and probably I do it a bit too. He would joke about things, even though he was serious.
Yeah, so sarcastic humour, using the sarcasm, but in truth, cutting down. Yeah. Critical humour.
Yeah. Yeah. I think though he relied on, as vegans, he was well read on his version of how one should follow a certain lifestyle. and so he felt that gave him reason to give everyone his opinion and lecture them at length. And obviously he was right.
There you go. Oh gosh.
And so now that he's, and I'm probably jumping ahead too fast.
No, it's all good.
Now that he's too old or quite old, he will not accept the doctor's opinion that it's old age that is affecting you now. He won't accept that his heart's worn out and his organs are shutting down. For him, there must be something I can do to stay in control.
He won't concede that he's vulnerable.
Correct.
Yeah. And aging is very that, isn't it? It's aging. You can't be invincible, which I guess has been his coping mechanism. It's quite sad. So tell me, what happened to your broader anger? What happened to the anger in traffic or when other people were, frustrating around you?
Pretty good, actually. I think on building sites and that I rarely lost it.
Yeah.
And when I did, people would go, oh, well, that was acceptable.
Right.
And so I wasn't over the top.
So it really had a ripple effect.
Yes.
You addressed the core issue. You became fundamentally less churned up within yourself, more accepting, less sadness in there. And then the anger, do you think? Do you just generally became less angry?
Well, you definitely, my wife, I can go away on holidays now and I don't have a dummy spit. You're out of your depth, you're in a new town, something doesn't go right and you'll swear and carry on. Well, I don't do that now.
Wow.
So
your wife must be pretty pleased with you.
My wife's surprised. And she'll comment afterwards, oh, we had 2 weeks away.
Non-event with any anger. That's
She's
wonderful.
amazing. She's very loyal.
Yeah.
And she's trying to understand where I've come from. And I made the mistake of searching out a girl that came from a good, normal, everyday family with no weird stuff,
That's not a mistake.
Yeah, but she doesn't understand.
Yeah, pretty hard for her to relate.
Yes.
And to try to educate on that experiential level. It's pretty hard to get that.
But no, she has really tried and she's amazing.
It's really exciting how it's had such a ripple effect.
Yes.
Absolutely. And do you find that you notice these traits in other people as you travel along now that you're informed?
Yeah.
What's that like for you?
To me, I call it playing the game. Some people need that power trip, so you let them win. Like it's not worth fighting over.
Right.
Because I don't care who wins this particular argument, but I know you need to.
Wow, so you can just really see that power play.
Exactly, yeah. And when you're in the workplace, I'm at the age where I don't want to leave and find another job, so you just go, yep, whatever.
Wow.
If a work colleague says the sky's green, I'll just agree with him because
that's extraordinary for someone.
They need to win.
Well, for someone who previously would go around and be irritated and respond with anger, that's an extraordinary swing.
It is.
You just basically can see... I mean, what I'm hearing is you're having compassion. You're saying, I can see what you need, and I'll let you just go off and run around in circles on that one.
Yeah, so, and even now that I go out and see my parents nearly every second day and do the dishes and tidy up and listen to them.
Which is incredible and very devoted of you.
Couldn't have done that once. I just call it doing the right thing. I feel good about it.
Yes.
I still need junk food when I leave because it is draining emotionally.
Yeah.
And, of course, my sister's just come up from Tasmania to help out, and she finds it very hard. I'm in a far better place than her now.
And intellectually, does she find that hard? Is that what she struggles with, or is it not that picture?
Oh, well, I think she can't accept that Dad is beyond change.
Oh, okay.
And so for her, it's... why can't I do it this way or that way if Dad tells her off? And of course, I say to her, just do it Dad's way because he's not going to change and you're the one that's going to get upset.
So just, he's a hurdle, just go around.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can have your little power plays. Like when I get to visit, it might be middle of summer, they have an air conditioner, but they're old school, so it won't be on. Even though they have a solar panel system that will power it for free.
Absolutely.
So I'll go in.
Decoration.
Yes. I'll, small talk. I'll go to the sink because it's after work. I want to get home. and I'll open the window because it's stifling hot, and he will get up on his walker, he will come over, and he'll reach in front of me very firmly so that he actually brushes me out of the way, and he slams the window.
Wow.
And then I open, I say, Dad, if I'm going to do the dishes, I need some fresh air. He doesn't care now because he's made his point.
Right.
He'll go and sit down, he's happy, he put me in my place.
You then gingerly open the window again?
Yep, I'm happy to open the window. Yeah.
Wow, it's a little play between you, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Everyone in their roles.
Yes.
And that's the thing, isn't it? You're really comprehending his role.
Yes.
And you're knowing he's not going to shift, and you're not condoning, but you're accepting that's just the level of his development.
Yes. Yeah. So Mum's just gone into a home.
Yes.
So he's not in control of her.
So that's extraordinary, isn't it?
For him it is, yeah. And I understand that.
Yeah.
So Mum will ring Dad up with a porky about why she should come home.
Yep.
Because she can't do anything because she's had someone telling her all her life how to do it.
Wow.
So she can't even use the remote on the TV because Dad's always done that.
You know, we think about, in Japan when people, traditionally would have bound feet so that they weren't able to walk. It's like she was bound.
Definitely.
And now she can't function.
She can't, no.
It's very sad.
It is sad. So Dad will ring me first thing in the morning and say, I'm going to get your mother out, and I've got to calm him down. And I get it, I understand that he's frustrated, he's not in control now. And I'll talk him down, I'll give him the reasons why. He doesn't realise that I signed Mum in.
Right.
And I've told the staff that only allow me to sign her out.
Yeah.
And
wow. Well, you know what? I think you're doing an incredible thing, being able to juggle love and compassion for parents when it's been a history of abuse and neglect. It's an extraordinary thing to now be the carer of them. I'm not saying complete neglect from your mum. I'm not saying that by any stretch. Yep. But, it really is an extraordinary thing to have this stage of life.
Absolutely, and I couldn't have done it unless I'd spoken to you.
Oh.
No, I couldn't have. I would have lost it, walked away.
Yeah, and that would have been understandable, actually.
Yeah. And you're right again, but of course onlookers wouldn't have known the history.
No.
They might have even looked at me and said, what a terrible son.
And we better wrap up, but can I just make one more point, and I want to hear your question on this. I've actually come across quite a few people who maybe they're interested in narcissistic personality disorder, maybe they're psychologists and they've trained in it, but they don't get it. I have a theory that unless you have lived it, unless you've experienced it, you don't qualitatively understand the nature of a personality disorder, a narcissistic personality disorder. It's all textbook. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I talk with psychologists and caseworkers and people that work with young people.
Yeah.
And when I tell my stories, they don't get it at all.
Exactly.
Even though they've read about it.
And qualified.
Yes. And I think even the biggest thing that spun me out was when I read books written in the 60s that describe my family exactly.
Yes.
Golden boy, little lost girl, which is someone that apologises all the time.
Yes. And
goes out of her way to talk to everyone because every time someone talks back, she gets affirmation that she's all right.
Yes.
Yeah. And it really spun me out to think someone knew how our family would grow up.
Yeah.
And act, and yet we all think we're pretty independent, but we're not.
Well, there's a clear pattern with narcissistic personality disorder, and it affects so many families. It's argued to be 5% of the population. That's a very big statistic.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I suppose, aren't we wonderful humans? I survived.
You did.
And
you're gorgeous. You're a beautiful person. You really are.
But so many other people survive too.
Yes.
It takes years to get over it and recover.
Yes.
But, there's people everywhere. Once you've been in my situation and obviously the people you talk to, and they come out of the woodwork and they're all surviving.
As survivors, and you develop grit. You just develop self-awareness and compassion ultimately. And you just become so much more capable, self-reliant.
Yes, and I look at myself and others, and you can be proud that you survived.
Yeah.
Because some people don't.
No, and to survive, you need the information. You need the support.
Definitely.
And you need the scaffolding, because none of this is common sense.
No.
You have to learn it from somewhere.
Well, sadly, as humans, we look at someone when we put ourselves in their shoes and we think, well, they're probably feeling this, this and this at the moment, but they're not. And so you can't judge them by your human terms.
No.
It doesn't work. I even thought when Dad was first on his own, he might miss Mum or he'd be sad. And so I said to him, how are you going? And he went, good. Why shouldn't I be, you know?
That's right. It's not. Oh.
And I thought, silly me, you know. There I was actually feeling sad for him.
No, he was probably thinking about how it was inconvenient for him.
Yes,
sadly.
that he's got to go up and visit Mum and that sort of thing. So he'll ring me sometimes and say, I'm feeling poorly, I won't go up today. And I go, that's fine.
There you go. Yeah, you can't take a healthy framework and put it on someone like this. They're going to see it completely differently. Well, tell you what, I am so appreciating that you've come in. I've really enjoyed getting into the corners with all of this, and it's such an incredibly valuable area. And I really hope people can take this information, those that can relate, and they can see it as a springboard to really kind of get them out of a sticky spot.
And there's a lot of information out there on the internet you can read.
There is. Now that you know where to look.
And it's worth doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, everybody. So if you want to find me, we've got the webpage KirstenHunterAuthor.com, Facebook, Kirsten Hunter Author, and Instagram, Kirsten Hunter Author, Twitter, Kirsten Hunter AU. Don't know if that's author or Australia, AU. What do you think? YouTube channel, Psych in Your Car, and this is our podcast, Signposts for Living with Dr. Kirsten Hunter. Thank you so much for coming, John.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it, and we're going to keep talking now, I'm sure.
We will.
See everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.